if you're a commercial landlord and you're deliberating putting flex in your building, something that's been coming up more recently, which has been helping internal business cases get approved when you kind of shoot it up upstairs, is whichever operator you bring into the fold, especially if it's under a management agreement because you're looking for an element of control, is to figure out with them, what does it look like if you take back some of that space? So I'll give you an example of a real scenario that we're figuring out right now. There's a building where there's a significant tenant who isn't entirely sure what their office strategy is moving forward, right? Let's say they need 2 floors, but they might need 2.5 at some point. But they don't want 2.5 now because it'll just be space they pay for and it's hibernating and it's sitting there. So as a landlord, you're kind of thinking, hey, do we do the deal where we try and push the 2.5 floors, but it's likely not going to happen because said tenant doesn't need that extra half floor? Or do we only do the 2 floors, but have a flex operation within the asset that can provide that 2-floor sum that you're trying to fill, right? That gap. However, the kicker is it's not a scenario where they just want to use private offices, desks, amenities within a flex space. They want that space at some point entirely to themselves. So if you're working with a flex operator on a management agreement, let's say it's a 1.5 floor solution, and that 1.5 floors might be 2,000 square meters and above. Okay, so you've got a decent quantum of space to make some returns. Imagine if that operator was happy with doing the 1.5 floors, right, and running that business for the next 2-3 years, but having a clause built in the agreement and an understanding that if that large anchor tenant that you're trying to secure wants half a floor, that operator will kind of forfeit that floor and give it back to you to give back to them. So they even thoughtfully design that space in a way where that tenant wouldn't mind just taking over it, right? So you don't put certain amenities or operational significant areas within that half floor, because as an operator, the flex operator knows they're going to eventually give it up. Because then you're entering a scenario where that half floor that is in question could be monetized for the 2-3 years by the operator till that tenant is ready to take it, right? And that tenant may even use it ad hoc because their return to work is slowly kicking off or they're growing under the flex operation or the flex business. But when they're ready to take it themselves, they take it. And it's good for you as an owner because it also reduces your exposure to the management agreement structure within your asset. Meaning, imagine you start with 1.5 floors because that's what the deal is. But then after 2-3 years, you convert the half floor portion of that 1.5 to a lease because the tenant needs to grow and take it off. So those are the kind of conversations you need to be having with operators who are pushing management agreements in front of you. Those are the conversations that we're having as a white label operator, because the whole point of a management agreement is for it to be a strategic partnership, right? It should not be a scenario where you're being forced to do a management agreement because a traditional operator frankly just wants to offload that risk because they have their own growth targets and they don't necessarily want to do a lease, or because fit out costs are so expensive right now. Historically that incentive that they would take to cover the capex and then abate some of their rent now barely covers the capex, hence the management agreement structure pushing the capital onto the landlord seems much more attractive for them, blah blah blah. It shouldn't be that scenario, and I'm not saying all the operators out there do it. There's some that do, but others are embracing the management agreement to really give more control over to the landlord. But as an owner, come on, if you're going to enter into that agreement which puts risk on you, where's your reward? And your reward shouldn't just be the commerce of getting slightly more than what you would have gotten if you were looking for a market rent, that you would have given away half to an incentive in this crazy market right now, which is bonkers. It should be, how can flexibility be included in that partnership so I can secure that tenant, which is going to help my asset valuation significantly? Those are the kind of conversations you should be having. So hopefully that was helpful. That was a bit of flex for thought, and feel free to reach out to me directly if you wanted any help with strategies like that with your building. See you later.